Hello and welcome to Chess Goblin. In this video, we will be seeing who will be crowned champion of the Chess.com Classic Tournament. Our two contestants here are former world champion and well-known Magnus Carlsen, playing against French Grandmaster Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. And if you've been following this tournament, you may have noticed that they played some games earlier in this tournament, which is indeed true, and Magnus won all three of those games. Maxime fell to the loser side of the bracket, but he has been working his way up and now have made it back to the grand final and a rematch against the person who put him in the loser side of the bracket, Magnus Carlsen. These games here in the final are 10-minute games with 0-second increment. Magnus starts out with the white pieces and he plays e4. And then we see a Sicilian here, and it's very basic, very standard Sicilian play. And then we see just the pieces shuffling around a little bit. And here is a notable move here. The bishop when he comes out to e6. And a big thing about Sicilians, and especially in this game, both players need to hold on to this d5 square. This is going to be an important square. And if Magnus, for example, took Maxime's bishop here on e6, then after he can recapture, he can later push this pawn and has got a lot of support on this d5 square. So Magnus does not want to take his bishop there. And Magnus plays the correct move, sliding his bishop back. So then if he takes it, he can just open up a rook file, and he never gives Maxime extra support here on this d5 square. So he slides his bishop back, and Maxime opens up this lane for castling here in the back. Then we see Magnus castle and Maxime castle. And it's very even here. Nothing substantial has taken place so far. We see them slide the rooks over. Magnus hop in his knight. A recapture. He hops his knight to the side. Magnus just slides his bishop over, getting him on open file. And now, after we've seen some moves being shuffled around, it looks like Magnus is slowly getting into a better position. And a reason for this is his bishops. If you look at the bishops in the game, Magnus can he has a nice diagonal with his dark squared bishop, and now his light squared bishop. Where on the other hand, Maxime's bishop is locked in on all four sides. And this bishop can be a big stumbling block for him later in the game. We see him hop his knight over to maybe open up a lane for his bishop. And then Magnus protects this pawn if the rook later moves down, so you can also he's got more flexibility with his queen and his bishop, and to bring it back down later in the game, potentially for more attacking pressure on Maxime's king. And here you see a lot of potential with Magnus bringing his bishops down and over, putting a lot of diagonal pressure down toward Maxime here. Then we see Maxime pushing his pawns up. Magnus slides his bishop back, so now he's going to open up these diagonals, put more pressure on Maxime. Maxime brings his queen over. Magnus slides his rook over. Then we see the pieces just shuffling a little bit more. And then we see this move, g4. And this move, Magnus took a minute of thinking time here. This is an excellent move here. It really opens up these bishops and just explodes the position. This is the best move in the position, and after a minute think, Magnus had the intuition that there is an important move, and he took it. g4. And this explodes the position, opening up this diagonal for the bishop, and if he pushes the pawn, the diagonal's still there. Maxime captures the pawn, a recapture, and then Maxime slides his rook over. And here is his first fatal error of the game. In this position, the computer would have preferred a move such as knight to f8. And the reason for this is to protect this square on h7. Because Magnus can later bring his queen up, and just keep hopping these pieces over, and this is going to be a very, very weak square for Maxime. By sliding his rook over, now he doesn't have the strong protection over it. And Magnus, if he plays correctly, can capitalize on this position. Magnus brings his queen up. The computer gives him a brilliant move here, because he's sacrificing the knight here on f3. And after Maxime captures the knight, the computer says it's a mistake, and now a forced mate is on the board. Magnus plays it correctly, chasing Maxime's king out of the corner, brings his bishop in, Maxime's king is on the run, and slides his bishop back, and Maxime resigns. And the reason why he can resign here, it's a forced mate. There's some checks he can give, like such as bringing his rook over, then he can bring his queen down. But after these pieces have been traded off, there's a mating threat. Anything black does. There's no other moves now. Because there's checkmate there. There's so many ways he can cut this cake here. There's just so many checkmates he could potentially get on the board, and Maxime resigns. So now Magnus is up 1-0. Here is the second game of their matches. And now Magnus has the black pieces. He is up 1 point now, and the first person to get 2.5 points wins and is crowned champion of the tournament. And we see another Sicilian here. This one is an open Sicilian, and it's very standard again. Very standard play here. Just opening up his line for his bishop, Magnus down it back here, and getting the central squares such as often Sicilians would play. Very standard plays here. Shuffling the pieces around. Nothing super substantial. This is a lot of it is theory here. And they're playing pretty quickly. They just hop the pieces around. Maxime's attacking Magnus's rook. He blocks it. Slides the bishop back. Tries to open up this position here. The knight hops in. Then he attacks the bishop. You see some pieces traded off. And now Magnus is, according to the computer, doing slightly better. But he's materially equal, and there's no substantial difference of why he's way better. Then we see the queens get traded off. And it looks like in this game, Magnus is kind of playing for a draw. He's just trying to trade the pieces off, then get back to the white pieces, and then play for a win. We just see pieces traded off super quickly. And here, although Maxime has this passer pawn on the A file, Magnus has some extra pawns here. But if anyone is now winning, it says it's Magnus, but this pawn could potentially be threatening for him later in the game. Pushes his rook up, pushes this pawn, and then Magnus hops in this knight. And the computer thinks it's a mistake, because you can just go rook e3, and then, such as you move your rook over. It's nothing fatal in this position. I wouldn't say it's a mistake. It's just a move, not the best move. It would have preferred a move such as f4 here, and to have more pressure going down quickly at Maxime. But anyway, this is what Magnus does. And then we see the rook. Then we see rook right here, attacking the knight. We see him give a check here. Magnus gives a check here on f3. And the reason why you cannot capture back with this pawn is because then you hang the rook here. So Maxime plays the correct move, brings his king up, he loses this pawn. And a brilliant move here, again, is given to Magnus. The second game now with a brilliant move. And the reason why this is a brilliant move is because you cannot really capture back with a knight, because then Magnus can check the king and knight with his pawn, and you cannot capture back with this pawn because then your rook is hanging here. You slide your king up, and you give another check here. And after you capture these, then you win this pawn here. And then it's pretty even. It's not super substantial, but that's the reason why you cannot capture back right away. So after he captures, we see a trade-off of rooks. Maxime slide his king back, and we see the trade-off the knights. And in this position, Magnus is one pawn up, but Maxime has this outside passer here. Magnus just slides his rook over and stops it. And now all he has to do is walk his king over to the pawn and then capture, and these pawns can do all the work here to stop this one pawn here. And that is what Magnus does. He brings his king over, captures the pawn, and then this is an important move here. Maxime cannot capture this rook, because after Magnus captures back, Maxime captures a pawn. Now Magnus's pawns cannot be stopped. If he captures, his king cannot keep up. Magnus will win. So Maxime cannot capture this rook. And he plays the correct move, giving a check, and then bringing his king up. And then we see this game just finish off by trading off every last piece. And it ends in a draw. And now we head into the third game. Here is the third game of the match. And Magnus now has the white pieces again. In this game, Maxime will still survive if he gets a draw or if he gets a win. Magnus, though, if he wins this game, he wins the crown and wins this tournament. And it opens up with d4. And sort of a Catalan Queen's Gambit kind of position. And then, very standard still, nothing crazy in these games. Trade off the pawns. And here, you can see Maxime just trying to explode the position a little bit, open up this position here, so then he can potentially even get a queen trade here. So he can just get the pieces off the board. Maybe Maxime now is playing for a draw with black, so then he can have white pieces for the next game and play for the win. Magnus brings out his bishop, castles, castles, and then he attacks the knight. He hops back, and to break up this pin here, Magnus slides his bishop back, and we see a trade-off of pieces, and then he captures this pawn. And this pawn here is never really a free pawn. Although it looks kind of free, after Magnus slides his rook away, this pawn here is going to be a big threat, and then this bishop is also going to be in danger. What Maxime does here is he tries to protect this pawn, but then you can just capture this bishop, and then Maxime's bishop is under attack, and he has to retreat it. The way he does it is he protects it with the rook. Here. There could have been other moves, such as if he tried to protect it with his, say, his bishop. Computer says it's even possible to, this is its favorite line, bringing that over, attacking the rook. And then you can also push a3, and then you're attacking this pawn, and a3 is also protected by the queen. And then you'll be picking up a pawn. But in any respect, pawn is captured, and now it's back materially equal. And according to the computer, it's equal to. See the queen hop up, rook slide over. Now Maxime's offering a rook trade here. Magnus does not take it. Maxime does, though. Each of these opportunities, there is to trade a piece. Maxime does it. He seems to be trying to trade off pieces very quickly, like he's playing for a draw. And then we see him bust this pawn open. Magnus bringing his queen up, bringing his rook up, I mean. And you can see Magnus, he's trying to put an effort in. He's trying to get some winning opportunities here by shoving pieces forward like his rook, by sacrificing pieces, pushing them forward. And we see a trade-off of pawns here. And Maxime plays this move in 1 second, and it is a mistake. And now Maxime is losing. Because now, after his bishop gets traded off, although he's just trading off pieces, the computer significantly likes Magnus' position. What it wants him to do is push his king up. And this pawn here, the computer thinks, is unable for Maxime to hold. And as we see in these next couple moves, Magnus pushes his pawn up. Not the best move. It's okay, though. And then we see Maxime blunder. And the reason why this is a blunder is because Magnus can sacrifice another piece. This move should be almost a brilliant move here. Because he's sacrificing the piece. He can't capture. Captures back. Gets a check. And he also holds on to this pawn. What Maxime does here is he takes the queen. Magnus takes his queen. And now these pawns are in danger. He's got a strong passer in the center. Maxime now is in deep, deep trouble. Tries to hold it back by bringing the rook over to protect the file. And Magnus just needs to walk his king over, chase the rook out of there, and march this pawn to the finish line. And that's what happens. Brings his king over, chases the rook back, and now he's just going to guide this pawn to the end. And here, it's okay if Magnus loses some of these other pawns, because this strong one in the center will survive. He captures, and Magnus attacks his pawns, and he pushes. And the reason why Maxime can't, for example, go after like this pawn here is because after he captures, say Magnus doesn't have to take back, he can just push this pawn forward. And if Maxime captures, he can't bring it over because the king guards this square, and he will be in no time to stop this pawn from reaching the end. So he pushes this pawn, and Magnus just keeps marching his to the end. Doesn't need to worry about recapturing, because this is the golden ticket. Tries to stop it, but now it's too late. Now he's losing his pawns. He's down one pawn, but this is a very important pawn. He can bring the rook over, block this one from protecting the pawn from getting to the end, gives him a check, but the king just hides behind the pawn. Now this pawn is going to be queened. And at this point, there's very little hope for Maxime. And after this move, Maxime resigns. This pawn is going to be very difficult to stop. It's going to be impossible to stop, especially against someone like Magnus. This is not a super difficult endgame to queen this pawn. And Magnus is now crowned champion of the Chess.com Classic Tournament, winning 2.5 out of 3 games in the grand final. Magnus commented after this game that it was kind of disappointing, the lack of games that he got to play in this tournament, because he kept winning. He wanted to have good preparation, be prepared for upcoming tournaments. He wanted to prepare for the Esports World Cup and Norway Chess. But unfortunately, he is too good. But it seems like he doesn't need to prepare. Who is his competition in these games? if you have liked this video, please hit that like button down below. It really helps. And subscribe if you have not already done before. I hope to see you in the next video.